Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the video. In this video, we're going to be making a bracket or a bulkhead support for the ratchet chassis. But in the video, I'm going to take you through all of the steps on how to make that bracket from my brain to the CNC Plasma Cutter, all the way to the chassis. So typically in a video like this, somebody would show you this process and they would show you all of these smooth, well ironed out techniques that they use to kind of show you how they do it, maybe motivate you how they do it, and they would be showing you kind of the best, most highly polished way to do it. This video is going to be the exact opposite of that. I do at this point have a process where I can go from my brain to the plasma cutter, I can cut parts out and I can use them on the chassis. I made my CNC plasma cutter. I made it using CNC equipment that I had from a CNC mill that I have down in the basement. And this equipment's like 15 years old. So it's really outdated at this point. And I knew that I was going to grab it and use it for this CNC plasma cutter. And if the CNC plasma cutter panned out like it is, I was going to update it to more modern electronics, which I'm going to do, but I haven't done that yet. The reason I'm going to make a video showing you guys how I do it now is because I think this video shows you the basics, and I think it's really important to have the basics first, so you can have the basics and then you can go to something more automated. But if you run into some problems because you have the basics, you can kind of take a step back and figure out what's going wrong or make some changes or some tweaks or what have you. So the system that I'm using right now is very old-fashioned. It's really mostly just entering data yourself to get what you need up to the CNC plasma cutter. And that's what I'm going to show you guys. And then hopefully further on down the road, I'll do another video like this, but it will be with a more up-to-date electronics package that will be quicker and more automatic or more automated. But if I run into problems, I will have the skills that I'm showing you guys right now, so that hopefully I'll be able to figure things out, make some tweaks, and stay ahead of the game. And I'm not going to show you the specifics of each individual step. I'm just going to take you high level through all of the steps until I get the part all the way down to the chassis and tacked in place. So what I'm looking to do is, I've got this shock tower right here, and I always meant to add a piece in here just to kind of break this, to kind of tie this all in place. And I don't want to do a solid plate. I think that'll just be wasting space. And I was originally just going to do some corner gussets in here, but I decided I want to make something a little bit fancier with my plasma cutter, just because that's nice, and I want this chassis to be really nice. So I decided to make a piece on the CNC plasma cutter, and that's what we're going to do. So the first step that I do, I know basically what I want, and I know where it needs to go. So the first thing I have to do is I have to make just a foam board or a cardboard template. So it's a little bit crowded in here right now because the master cylinders are in there now. Let me show you on the other side. So what I did is, this is backwards. I've got all my measurements on this side, but essentially this piece, I don't know if I can do this with one hand. Essentially this piece fits right in here. So that is the exact dimensions of the piece that I need. So I took all my measurements and I made this piece. And if you guys can see, this has all the measurements and the angles written on it. So this is my template. So at this point in the game, I've got my, let's call this a template of what I want. But now I need to take this and I need to put it into the computer, and I'm going to do that using what they call CAD software. CAD stands for Computer Aided Design. There are so many different softwares out there that you can do CAD with, and a lot of them are free. And I'm not going to begin to sit here and tell you all of them that are out there because I don't know. CAD is not my area of expertise, but in one way or another, I've used CAD for about the last 15 or 20 years, so I know how to use it and get around and get done what I need. So I'm going to do my CAD design in Bentech because I use the Bentech software for designing the chassis, and I'm very comfortable with the Bentech software, and I don't want to have to learn something else. So I'm going to take the dimensions of my template and I'm going to put it into Bentech in the sheet metal module, which I'm using as CAD software, and that's going to get me the X and Y coordinates that I need to then write that into a G-code program. And I'll cover that when I get there. Right now, I'm just going to show you, I'm not going to show you how to draw this in the CAD software, but I'm going to show you how I drew it up and then how I'm going to take it from there to the G-code. Okay, so now I've pulled up Bentech and I'm going to go up here to my recent files and I'm going to go to bulkhead support. I'm going to pull that up and I'm going to enlarge that. And what you're looking at right now, I already drew this up, is you're looking at the outside dimensions of that template that I made. And then you can see I put a large area in the inside that's going to be cut out to save weight. And then there's 4 points on the top here that will all get stitched to the chassis, and then 4 points at the bottom that'll all get stitched together. So this is essentially going to be 4 heavy-duty corner gussets, let's call it. It's tying itself in a little bit. It's not triangulated per se, but this is going to add tons of strength to the shock tower there, and I think it's going to look nice and fancy, and it won't be overly heavy as well. So at this point, I've already spent, and this took me a while because I drew it a couple of different ways getting what I wanted, but if I go to details, and if I open up this box, and then if you see down in the corner here is my X and Y start coordinate. So that means that this X and Y is 0. And I purposely drew this with everything to the top and to the right because that means my values are all going to be positive values. If I drew anything to the left, the X value would be negative. And if I drew anything underneath, the Y value would be negative. And I hate putting in positive and negative values if I don't absolutely have to because it gets really confusing. So you can see I've started with my X and Y, my 0, 0, in the lower left-hand corner so that everything above and to the right is going to be positive. And for my little brain, that's a lot easier. So what I can do is I'm going to draw this piece by piece and I'm going to convert it into G-code. Now at this point, now that I have my drawing and I have X and Y coordinates for every point, I'm going to manually draw it into G-code. And G-code is basically the code or the language that my CNC Plasma Cutter or the software that's driving my CNC Plasma Cutter is going to use. So you have to convert it into G-code. Now, typically you don't really have to convert it into G-code because you would go from your CAD software to what they call CAM software, C-A-M, which is essentially stands for computer-aided machining. So we go from computer-aided design to computer-aided machining. With computer-aided machining software, you tell it your drawing, you tell it which side of the cuts you want to cut on, you tell it if it's a plasma cutter, your offset of your plasma cutter, if it's a mill, the offset of your mill tool, if it's a router, the diameter of your router bit. You give it all that specific information and then it will generate the G-code for you. I struggle with that right now because the CNC software that I'm running up on my CNC Plasma Cutter is Mach 2, and all of the modern CAD softwares that I've tested are writing a little bit too complicated for Mach 2. They're more tailored towards Mach 3. I've tried it and it messes up my Mach 2 software, which is fine because on my CNC Plasma Cutter, these parts are just two-dimensional and actually writing them by hand isn't that difficult. When I upgrade my electronics and my hardware for this plasma cutter, I will be switching to Mach 2. Right now I can't, so I'm stuck with Mach 2. So I'm going to write this by hand, which this goes back to what I was saying. It's it's much more labor intensive, but if you can write it by hand, you really know what's happening And what I've done in the past, because I have used CAM software before, is the CAM software will write the G-code, and then usually I have to go in, look at the G-code, and I'll make a couple of tweaks if I want a couple of things changed. And I can do that because I understand at least the basics of G-code. And if you don't start by writing programs like I am manually in G-code, I think you would struggle with that. And in G-code, I'm not going to go over G-code much because there's a lot of parameters to G-code. But for what I'm using it for, is so incredibly simple. I actually only need 3 elements of the programming, and that is G1, which is just point-to-point, straight line, G2, which is clockwise rotation, and G3, which is counterclockwise rotation. So what I'm going to do, I can open up Microsoft Notebook, and then I already wrote this G-code, so I'm going to open it up, and it's the bulkhead support top. And what I did, you can see that all of my commands here are either G1, G2, or G3. That's it. The only other command I used was at the very end. I used M2, which just tells the program that it's done. So what I do is just point by point. I started at 0, 0, 0. You can see my very first line here is G1, X0, Y0, feed rate 20. Feed rate is the speed of your machine. So I guess that's another parameter I'm using, but my feed rate is 20. And then at that point, I just tell it to go to the first point, which is X 2.25, Y 2.75. At that point, I will manually start my plasma cutter torch because my CNC software does not have torch controller. So I have to do that by hand, which is a little bit of a pain. But again, like I said, this is a very archaic way of doing it, but it's I'm getting it done, I guess. And then from that point, I will strike the torch, and then the CNC Plasma Cutter is just going to run around and make this inside cut. When it stops, I will turn off the torch, and then the machine is going to jog back over to 0, 0. And then I'm going to start the torch again, and it's going to run around and make this cut. And when it's done, I'm going to turn the torch off. So this is my G-code right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load this up on a USB flash drive, and then I'm going to take it upstairs because I did all this on my laptop, which is Windows 10, and my desktop PC upstairs that's actually running the CNC software is not operating on Windows 10. It's operating on Windows XP. So, and that's not on my network or anything. So I need to put it on a flash drive, and then I'll take it to the computer upstairs. Now I've got the USB with my G-code program on there. So like that upstairs. And you can see up here, I've already placed a 1/8 inch thick piece of metal on here that, remember this is my template, that should fit that okay. And if you can see, I marked my 0, 0 there, so that's where I want to start the torch head. So the first thing I need to do is take my USB, plug it into this old ass computer. Now I've got my USB plugged into this old Windows XP computer. So I'm gonna fire this old girl up. Give that a couple of minutes to fire up. We can enjoy the view. I like the view from the loft because our house is a ranch, so this is actually the highest point of the house. This is the highest window, so I love checking out the view out here. Catch a nice sky view of the mauler while we're waiting for the PC to fire up. Alright, looks like she's fired up. There's the street bike I used to have, and I sold to help get money for the transaxle for Ratchet. Okay guys, so now I've pulled up Mach 2 on the Windows XP. Sorry, you're gonna have to watch this through the camera. I can't video through the computer like I can on my laptop. But either way, we won't be on here for very long. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to load up the G-code that I just transferred up here, which is the bulkhead support top. I'm going to open that up. And now you can see here, this is the layout of the part that I just drew. It looks just like it did in the CAD software because it is the same, but now it's been written into G-code, and you can see the G-code over here. The computer's starting at the top, but it's following each one of those points, and the computer, or this Mach 2 software, is going to take that G-code and it's going to turn it into pulse signals for the stepper motors on my CNC Plasma Cutter. So the first thing I like to do here is make sure that everything is zeroed so that I'm starting at 0, 0 down in the corner here. And I'm just going to hit start. And I'm going to let the software run a test run through it and just make sure that everything operates like it's supposed to. I will, right now it's running at the proper feed rate, so it's real time. I'm going to speed it up about 300%. All right, it looks good. It ran through really good. It ran the whole cut, no problems, and it came back to 0, 0, and then it hits that M2 command and it knows that it's done. So I'm real happy with that. So I'm going to reset my feed rate speed, so I'm back to 100%, which is real time. And I'm going to click rewind. So I'm starting from the beginning. I'm almost ready to cut. I just need to put the torch head on the 0, 0 position, and then turn on the plasma cutter, get a couple things going, and we'll be good to go. Okay, so now I've got a piece of metal on there, and I have moved the torch to what is going to be our 0, 0 home position. You already saw me do a test run through the software, but now just to make sure that everything is set up properly on here, I'm going to do a dry run with the plasma cutter, just moving everything around, but I'm not going to have the plasma torch turned on. Alright, I think I'm pretty much good to go. I'm going to run over here and turn on this dust collector. Pulls from the cabinet of the plasma cutter, so it pulls as many fumes as it can out of here and throws them just outside. And I'm going to turn on the actual plasma cutter itself. And then I'm going to set the camera up on a tripod and let's see if we can get this cut. All right, so here is my finished product. Came out real nice. It matches the original template as far as the outside parameters go. And one step that I forgot to show you guys was I actually, once I put these dimensions into Bentech, and drew out all of my notches and everything, then I actually print this out in full size so that I can actually take it out here and I put it, I actually put it up here in position and I test it, and I just make sure that all the dimensions that I did and everything are good. After I verified that, then I started writing the G-code. So here's the final product. Goes up in here, something like that. All right, I couldn't really clamp it in there per se, but I put it up in position. It's got about a 1/16 gap on all edges, which isn't a problem because I'll be welding this in there with the MIG welder. But I'm real happy with it. I think it's going to get its job done really well. I think it looks good. Should give me, real good triangulation strength in all 4 corners. So that should give me the strength that I need. I'm not going to weld that in right now because in order to tack that in, I want to remove all the master cylinders, and I don't feel like doing that right now. So that's it for this video, guys. I just wanted to give you a little crash course or a little tutorial, or just show you right now like the most raw, let's call it archaic way to take something from your brain, from a thought to, let's see, I went from my brain to a template to CAD software to another template that I printed out to verify that what I drew up in CAD was good. Then from there I manually wrote out the G-code. Then I brought the G-code to my CNC software, which was Mach 2, and then I burnt the piece out, knocked off the slag with a hammer, took it outside and ground it clean with my grinder, and now it's ready to be welded. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching it. Hopefully it's helping you with motivation or whatever on whatever project you might be working on, and hopefully I'll see you on the next video. Take care.